Welcome back after a long hiatus to World of Warcraft, and today I'm in the alpha testing for the Legion expansion. My plan is to have a look at the various class changes they've introduced, starting with the prop Paladin, because that's my personal main class and one of my favourites. So to start off with, I want to have a look at how the talent trees have changed, because this is perhaps one of the biggest points. You can see, having a look at the tree, that it's completely different from what it was before. There's not really any point in comparing to the old one because virtually nothing is the same, perhaps besides the level 45 tier, which is pretty similar. From the start, you have your level 15 tier, which usually had the speed increasing talents. It's been completely revamped now. We have First Avenger, which is probably pretty similar to the glyph we used to have for Focused Wrath. It basically turns your Avenger shield into a single target ability. Increases your damage a bit against bosses, but it's less useful against multiple targets. It's the kind of thing you're going to be switching in and out of a lot depending on which sort of fight you're doing, I imagine. The next on the line is Day of Reckoning, which affects your taunt. I think it's probably the first time we've seen a talent that affects our taunt, and it simply just turns your taunt into a charge based ability, and any target affected deals 10% less damage to you. Now, on paper, it seems like having a 10% damage DR on demand is a good thing, but I'm not sure how this is going to affect the diminishing returns on taunts. It has the potential to possibly screw up some boss fights if you get a boss with diminishing returns. An example of that could be on Tyrant Volhari. She does have diminishing returns on taunts, and you can taunt to cancel out her phase 1 Conal Fire attack. But if you do it too much, you're going to hit DR and screw up the taunting for the tanks. So maybe we won't see bosses with taunt DR, but it's kind of too early to say at this point, I think. The final tier here just affects our Hammer of the Righteous, and it says that it always gains a damage bonus from Consecration. Now what that refers to is the fact that Hammer of the Righteous has now replaced Crusader Strike as your single target and your multi-target ability, and the multi-target section toggles on and off depending on whether or not you're standing in Consecration. So essentially this talent just makes it so Hammer of the Righteous always has the AoE component without having to worry about Consecration. The next tier has Familiar Holy Shield. No change there, nothing's different, just regular old Holy Shield. The second one here is Guardian's Light, which increases your healing from Light of the Protector. Light of the Protector is a new ability. Causes you to heal yourself for 50% of your missing health. Pretty straightforward, relatively boring ability, but just does what it says in the tin. And the last one here is Last Defender, and this is interesting, and it reduces your damage taken, but for every enemy around you. So perhaps in 5-man dungeons, challenge mode sort of style, this could be a worthwhile pickup. Holy Shield's also good in that sort of situation, so it might be a toss-up between these two. It just depends what the listed diminishing returns are here. It states that it has diminishing returns, but I'm not sure what those are. So it's just going to depend on whether or not it diminishes too quickly. Level 45 tier, Festive Justice. Your spells that consume holy power reduce the remaining cooldown on Hammer of Justice by 10 seconds. As you might have noticed, there is no holy power anymore, so I'm not sure why this is in the prop Paladin list of talents, because at the moment it doesn't actually do anything. So perhaps that's going to be replaced by something else, or reworked to work with some pro abilities. Next one is Repentance. Same as before, except this time it does 25% of a target's health and damage over the 1 minute of disorient. I suppose that is useful. It's, that's Repentance, you know what it does, but now it does some damage too. Likewise with Blinding Light, same thing as before, except it also now does some damage. They added the extra effect that it doesn't break on holy damage now, which is nice. So you can blind things and you can still hit them with something like Consecration or Judgments and they won't be taking damage. Nice quality of life fix. I don't think it affects the viability of the talent too much, but the fact that they added some damage on and stopped it from breaking just sort of brings it up to par with the rest, because Blinding Light was rather bad before. Our level 60 tier has a new thing here, Blessing of Spell Warding. Essentially this is like Blessing of Protection, but it just makes you immune to spells instead, so all it does is just switch your physical immunity for a spell immunity. This could have some potential applications in perhaps making people immune to certain fight mechanics. A lot of the stuff you have to immune in fights tends to be magical. Something like Static Shock from back on Lei Shen during Mists of Pandaria. If you had this blessing, it would have made a lot of difference. So the one after that is Blessing of Salvation. Same old Blessing of Salvation. Does what it does before. I don't think this is going to be used too much. It doesn't really do a whole lot unless the threat gameplay changes drastically throughout the expansion. I think the most likely pick is going to be the Retribution Aura, and the Retribution Aura deals damage when any target is struck besides you. So on 2 tank fights, you're going to be getting effects from this when your other tank is tanking, or if anyone else happens to get hit by an ad or so, you'll generate some threat and possibly pick it up. It's a good utility. It's not the most useful thing ever, but if you don't need Blessing of Spell Warding, I think Retribution Aura is going to be the default go-to. The next tier here has Divine Bulwark, which instantly grants 3 charges of Shield of the Righteous. You can see with Holy Power gone, Shield of the Righteous is now on a charge-based system. So this is potentially pretty useful because the cooldown has been increased on Shield of the Righteous, so you don't generate charges quite as fast as you did, or you would have previously. So potentially that's good just for getting your charges back and keeping the Shield of the Righteous uptime high. This one here, Crusader's Judgment. When you cast Judgment, you have a 30% chance of refreshing the cooldown on Avenger's shield. Now, I picked this because it seems to synergize well with First Avenger. First Avenger increases the chance for your cooldown to be reset. Your cooldown reset abilities to trigger by 100%. So, I assume these synergize together. There's nothing that indicates that they wouldn't. So that'll increase your Judgment chance for refresh up to 60%. So I think if you're using First Avenger, Crusader's Judgment is a mandatory pick to go with that. The third one on the line here is Blessed Hammer. Now, anyone who's played Crusader and Diablo is going to be familiar with this. It's essentially the exact same thing. You throw the hammer out, it spins around you in a spiral, getting further and further away from you as it goes, and hitting everything on the way. Now, it does more damage than Hammer of the Righteous. You can see that's the 4905 versus the 1818 there. It's quite a bit more, although in the grand scheme of things it's still pretty low compared to stuff like Shield of the Righteous or Avenger's Shields. I think the selling point of this talent is the 15% less damage, but it only affects one auto attack. So, really I'm not sure what this talent has going for it. On first glance it appears weak. Obviously there may be some sort of mathematics or some sort of stuff that comes out later that proves it is good, but first impressions suggest that's not a very good pick. The level 90 tier, also completely different. The one I have here right at the moment is Righteous Protector, and it just reduces the cooldown on Light of the Protector every time you use Shield of the Righteous. So you'll be using the 2 of these pretty often, and getting them to synergize together is pretty nice. It increases your self-sustain a lot by giving you the 50% heal more often. With stuff like Sacred Shield gone, a little bit more self-sustain is good. The next one here is Judgment of Light. Anyone who played during, say, Icecrown Citadel era will be already familiar with what this does. You apply the Judgment of Light, and all of your allies who hit the target are healed, so long as the Judgment of Light's active. One of the fun things to do back during Icecrown was have your healing numbers on, cast Judgment of Light, and you'd just see an explosion of green numbers all over your screen. Everyone would be healed by this. And it's quite often a fight between paladins to keep your Judgment of Light up because it contributed directly to your healing on the healing meters. So if your Judgment of Light was the one doing all the healing, then you looked fantastic, and if the other paladins were getting theirs overwritten by you, then they just looked like trash, because you can only actually have one Judgment of Light up at a time. So yeah, fun mechanics. I imagine if you have multiple prop paladins in raids, you'll be allowed more than one Judgment of Light this time. They don't usually put a cap of one player and stuff like that anymore. The last talent in the level 90 tier here is Consecrated Ground. And finally, something people have been asking for so long, Consecration can now heal allies. But the healing sucks. And you get 50% reduced move speed. I suppose that's nice. Yeah, the healing is pretty garbage. I don't know why you'd pick this talent. If for some reason you wanted 50% reduced move speed, I guess you could pick this. But I honestly don't see any reason to otherwise. It's just not very useful in the healing. And the final tier here is the level 100 tier. Now, Aegis of Light is very interesting. It harkens back to the old Aura Mastery. You'll reduce damage taken by 20% for you and all your allies. And they need to be standing within 10 yards behind you. It's a bit weird because you might not be able to hit melee targets unless you turn your back to a boss. It's a little bit clunky. Maybe if ranged targets are standing behind you, but it seems like the positioning on this is going to matter a lot, so it's going to limit what kind of boss you can use it on. But it is nice to see our tanks have some sort of raid cooldowns back again, although they have limited it severely. And the cooldown's pretty long too, maybe once, twice at most per fight, instead of the old 2 or 3 minutes on the Aura Mastery. The next ability here is Knight Templar, reduces the cooldown on Divine Steed by 50%, and reduces all damage taken while mounted on your steed by 20%. Now you might be wondering what Divine Steed is. It's a new ability. It summons the Charger mount, this one here, and you can ride around that for 4 seconds, increase your move speed by 100% like a regular ground mount would do. Basically it replaces all of the movement speed talents we had before, so it's similar to Speed of Light. It's a little bit shorter duration, a little bit faster movement speed. And the talent essentially just makes it so you get your old style Divine Protection back, 30-second cooldown, 20% DR, but you also get movement speed at the same time. So it's like you've combined the old Speed of Light with the old Divine Protection into this one talent. It does cut down the ability bloat. Whether or not that's a good thing is debatable. I do like having the option of having a sprint and a DR on separate cooldowns. Chances are if you want a DR up, you're going to be standing still taking some damage. If you want a sprint up, you're going to be sprinting around trying to pick up adds or something. I guess it's useful because you're not forced to move with Divine Steeds, but it feels a little bit redundant to have them both in the same talent. I would have liked to keep Divine Protection and perhaps have Divine Steed as a separate thing. The final talent here is Final Stand. This one is actually very, very interesting, and I think it's going to have a lot of positive applications in 5-man dungeons or challenge modes. Now, people are probably pretty aware of the tactic where you pop Divine Shield and you taunt a target. The usual behaviour of an enemy when you have Divine Shield up is to ignore you and go fight something else. But if you taunt, you can force them to hit you while you're immune for 2 seconds. Now this forces all targets around you to hit you for 8 seconds, which is the full duration of Divine Shield. Essentially, this is 100% damage reduction for 8 seconds, provided there aren't any adds that come in during that time that aren't affected by the taunt. Yeah, the animation's a little bit buggy. Maybe we'll see something nice here in the future, some sort of taunting animation or something akin to that, but at the moment it's just broken lines. But yeah, this is the one I'm most excited about on this line. It's very, very interesting, and being someone who did a lot of Mythic Dungeons, challenge modes, gold and so on, I'm pretty interested to try this. Okay, so lengthy talents aside then, we're going to have a look at what sort of new abilities we have and what has been cut. Now, the cuts are a lot more than what the new abilities are. We've lost Hammer of Wrath. We've lost Cleanse. Not used a whole lot, but it was nice to have that. Just cure yourself of diseases, poisons, so on. It didn't work with Magic, which was the Holy Paladin version, but now we can't do anything at all. One of the big cuts that people might not consider is Righteous Fury. I assume the threat modification is baked in somewhere else now, so we're permanently have an increased threat. But having the option of increasing or decreasing our threat on demand was nice, although Prot Paladin was perhaps the only tank who could do that without suffering a penalty. So losing that is not too surprising, but it is fairly disappointing. Another cut is Turn Evil. Okay, I don't think anyone's really disappointed by that. Word of Glory is also gone. I guess replaced by this Light of the Protector talent we had. I suppose that's okay because Word of Glory wasn't vastly used by Prot Paladins anyway. I mean, we had a system where we would buff up to 5 stacks of Bastion of Glory, and it sort of incentivized you to use Word of Glory, but because the effective health of a Prot Paladin was so low, you couldn't really afford the hit to your Shield of the Righteous uptime. It meant nobody was really using Word of Glory. Even if you were on low HP, it was usually almost always better just to hit Shield of the Righteous instead. But they're on separate systems now. There's no holy power, so you don't have to pick and choose, you can use both. One other cut is the row of talents. I believe it was the level 100 row that had the Light's Hammer, Holy Prism, and Execution Sentence. It's fairly disappointing because I think some of those talents were pretty interesting. They had nice choices behind them. Light's Hammer was a very nice visual. I guess now we're stuck with Consecration and we lose that. But yeah, all three of those are cut now. Another cut that's talent based is Seraphim. We've kept Holy Shields, but we have lost Seraphim. Now, a lot of Paladins didn't like Seraphim because it was sort of lauded as difficult to use. Honestly, I don't know if I buy that too much. I think it just required a bit of forward planning. But with the Holy Power system cut, you can see why it would go away. And it did cause a few balance problems, given how it's scaled at the start of the expansion versus the end of the expansion. In the first tier of Warlords of Draenor, Prot Paladin damage was insane, and it actually led to a Seraphim nerf for Prot only, from 1000 stats down to 750. Yeah, sad to see it go, I suppose, but it's not a drastic loss. One of the other ones that's gone is Holy Avenger. So you can see with stuff like Holy Avenger and Seraphim gone, and no more Legendary Tank Ring, we're going to have our burst damage cut down by a lot. I think this is something Blizzard wants to clamp down on because they've introduced recent changes to how RPPM trinkets work. You're not going to be able to stack all of these cooldowns at the start, you're not going to have every trinket proccing, and just front loading all of your damage in one go. It seems like everything's going to be a lot more balanced across the course of a fight, so in that sense it makes sense that Holy Avenger has been removed. Now, as for removals, we've lost all of those things, but what have we gained? Now, something I mentioned before was Light of the Protector. We've gained this in place of Word of Glory. Heal yourself for 50% of your missing health. Very, very boring, but it's going to be useful. Just being able to heal yourself for a big amount is a useful thing. And it also synergizes with the Avenger Shield here, that increases the effects of your Shield of the Righteous or Light of the Protector. So yeah, you increase that by a fifth, increases it up to 60% of your missing health. It's pretty nice. Another thing we have gained, or a thing we've lost, look at it either way, is we've lost our Holy Power, but we have gained a full charge-based system here. All of our abilities are now based on charges, and you have a chance to refresh charges based on your criticals. That's in a talent somewhere around here, let me just find it. Here it is, Grand Crusader. So when you avoid a melee attack or use Hammer of the Righteous, you got a 30% chance of refreshing Avenger Shield. Similarly, this Readout passive, our Judgment Critical Strikes causes to gain a charge of Shield of the Righteous. Now this is the big one. We can look at similar systems such as Monk Elusive Brew, where they're generating charges based on their crits. Now this is something I don't think is a very good thing. I think having our defense tied to critical strike chance is a very, very bad thing. One of the things about tanks is the ability to be consistent. If you're a DPS, critting is fine, getting critical procs is fine, because over the course of a fight everything smooths out. Now you can say for a tank everything also smooths out over the course of a fight, but that doesn't matter if you lose all your defenses at one point and you die, because then the fight's over. If a DPS does less damage at one point, they can bring it up later with more damage at another point, and that's okay. But for tanks, I don't think this is a good system. People don't like how Elusive Brew works right now, and I don't like how this Judgment Crit thing works right now as well. This is something I really want to see changed, but I'm not too hopeful that Blizzard will change it because it's been in here for a while now. Unfortunately, this may become the status quo, and it may lead to things like crit stacking on Prot Paladin rather than the old haste stacking. Ultimately, this is probably one of the worst points of the current Prot Paladin on Alpha, and I really truly hope that Blizzard takes a long look at this and realises that crit procs are not good for tanking. So let's have a look at how the rotation works then. It's very similar to how it worked before, minus the Holy Power plus the charge based system. Now because we have first Avenger, we want to be using Avenger Shield as much as it comes up. You can see it gives us this Avenger's Valor buff that increases our next Shield of the Righteous or Light of Protector. so I would be wary of using Shield of the Righteous without this buff, because it's only 25% without the buff, and with the buff it goes up to 42%. It's a pretty big increase, and the charges on Shield of the Righteous are so slow to recharge that I think it's worth waiting a bit just to make sure you have the Avenger shield buff up every time you need it. Besides that, your Hammer of the Righteous is the replacement for Crusader Strike. It's low cooldown, it's spammable. The Consecrated Hammer talent is supposed to make it so it has no cooldown, but that currently doesn't function. So it does have a bit of a cooldown regardless of which talent you take. And Judgment is the same as always, deals damage, and it causes the enemy to take increased damage from Crusader Strike and Holy Shock, but Crusader Strike is gone, so I don't know if that works with Hammer of the Righteous. A bit of toolset cleaning up needed there. Based on the talents I'm taking, I'm going to prioritise Avenger Shield as one of my highest abilities, and I'm going to prioritise Judgment as the number 2 ability, just to get the Avenger Shield cooldown refreshments. The idea is to keep the Avenger's Valor buff up as long as I can, and as often as I can, and then dump those charges into Shield of the Righteous. We start here with Avenger's Shield, get our Judgment going, we've got a buff up here, we can use Shield of the Righteous, keep filling in with Hammer, Avenger's Shield again, another Shield, Judgment every time it's available, Shield when it's available, another Judgment here, keep filling in with Hammer, no buff yet so won't use that Shield of the Righteous charge, keep fishing for it, and there it is, now we can Shield of the Righteous, and you can see how it goes. You always have the option of filling in with Consecrate here on your dead time. You can see a lot of stuff has new animations. So yeah, it's a little bit different from what we're used to, but it's not drastically so. One of the nice things is a lot of the animations have been changed. You can see Judgment now throws this nice hammer, and Avenger's Shield looks a bit different as well. We've got some new sound effects as well. Hammer of the Righteous no longer makes that awful noise. It's got a new one instead. And Consecration sort of falls down from the sky instead of just spreading out from you. It's a pretty nice rework. I like a lot of these animations. And of course, the most important thing of all in all of these changes, we have Bop back. It's not Hand of Protection anymore, it's Blessing of Protection. So all those stuck up guys in your guild that reminded you the acronym was incorrect, well, you can shove it in their face now because it's back. The only other real change we have here is the loss of our seals system. The only sort of choice we had between seals was the Cleaving Seal and the Healing Seal, and it was pretty much the Cleaving Seal or the I'm a Big Pussy Seal. So yeah, there wasn't really a whole lot of decision to be made there. I don't think it's a great loss having the seals system go away. Maybe introducing more choice in the seals, like 3 or 4 seals would have been okay, but yeah, I think that's okay. I think we can deal with the loss of the seals system. I don't think it added too much in the way it was presented through Warlords of Draenor. Okay, so thanks for watching this Prop Paladin changes video then. It went on a little bit longer than I expected it to. I guess a lot of that's down to the talent overview. Hopefully we'll be able to look at a few more classes. I'll try and do them justice. I don't play every class extensively, but hopefully I'll do a bit of research beforehand to make sure I'm not spouting absolute rubbish. There's a good chance I did in this video, but hopefully the majority of what I said was correct and accurate, and people can make some sort of informed decision on whether they want to play Prop Paladin in the next expansion. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.